Good evening. You working? Hi. Okay. Test. No, it's not working yet. Huh?
Do we turn the volume down?
Yeah, because it's not. Can you hear me?
Speakers on.
Nobody has anything. Good evening.
There you go.
Woohoo. San Dimas City Council and Successor Regions meeting will come to order. City Council is seated. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Who moved that?
Would the staff make sure the flag gets back in the proper position after this meeting? You kind of confused us. I'm looking over there where it always is, and we had a debate on this for a long period of time until we figured out where it is, but that will, okay, thank you. Presentations, San Dimas Sheriff's Station Booster Club, 27th Annual Car Show. Mitch Crawford.
Somebody going to be operating the slides? Thank you. Good evening, City staff, City Council, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I know you have a crowded agenda, so I'm going to breeze through this. This coming Sunday, we're having our 27th Annual Car Show. It should be the 29th, but because of COVID, we've skipped it the past 2 years. On the left, you see the logo for the car show. On the right is the logo that we're using for this year's car show. Many people don't realize it, but the main street of the United States, from Chicago all the way to Santa Monica, Route 66, goes through San Dimas. So we're using that as our theme this year. 100% of the net proceeds go to the Booster Club to support our station volunteers. This includes the Uniformed Reserves, the Mounted Posse, the San Dimas Mountain Rescue Team, Disaster Communication Services, Law Enforcement Explorers, and our civilian volunteers. This relieves some of the pressure and activities from our sworn deputies that allows them to concentrate more on keeping our community safe. So yes, we're going to have cars, and some people bring their cars and a display. Sadly, I chatted with this gentleman. He will not be pumping gasoline for anybody. The Mounted Posse will be there with their horses, and we have an unusual display. A Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 1024 in Santa Ana has a Bell UH-1 Huey medevac helicopter. They're bringing this out for healing. I grew up during the Vietnam War, and many of the people that came back were not treated very nicely. This is a helicopter designed to help heal some of those wounds. Thank you, Mayor Bedard. I reached out to the mayor and said, you know, the city staff wants us to block the entrances. We don't want to have what happened in Santa Monica a couple years ago, where somebody drove through the barricades and injured and killed a couple of people. So I said, you know, we have a very large driveway with Albertsons that will be closed. How can we block that? So he made a phone call, and we're going to have one of the Foothill Transit double-deck electric buses on display. This type of bus is replacing the articulating buses that are very, very long, and they're electric, so that's going to be fun. Food and drink. Our friends from San Dimas Mountain Rescue will be working in the senior kitchen, preparing a pancake breakfast and a hot dog lunch. Tacos by La Poblanita here in San Dimas. I'm still confirming that. The good news is Mike's ice cream truck will be here. That's everybody's favorite. And we'll have ice cold beer. I want to point out that the city has very exacting standards for putting on an event like this. Working with the city staff, it's almost like they've been on my committee with the support they've given, except for they don't have to sit through the boring meetings. So I'd like to call out Ronnie Conda, Matt, Daniel, Lauren, and even though I didn't have to work with our city clerk, when she found out about the car show, she was the first person to volunteer. So thank you, Mrs. Black. Absolutely. So come on out this Sunday. Cars, food, ice cream, tacos, a double-decker bus, horses, a helicopter, and I left off, we'll be having a 50-50. We'll be having raffle prizes as well. So it should be a fun event. So we hope to see all of you there and raise a little money for the San Dimas Sheriff Station Booster Club to support our station volunteers. Thank you.
Mitch, in case I missed it, where?
I'm sorry?
In case I missed it, where?
Oh, gosh, I did leave that out. I need to have somebody proof my presentation. It's going to be here at Civic Center Plaza on 1st Street and Bonita Avenue.
Thank you. 1st Street and Bonita Avenue, Civic Center Plaza. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please stay safe.
Thank you. I think most people we know around us right now have been to this event, to this car show for many, many years, and it does bring lots of people from different parts of the region here. They look really forward to this. I'm not sure how many cars will be there, but there'll be a ton, because I know that Mitch Crawford has put his heart and soul into making sure that this is an event that we all can be proud of. So thank you, Mitchell. Okay, we'll move on to oral communications. Members of the audience are invited to address the City Council on any item on this agenda and not on this agenda. Public comment will not be taken during each individual item except for public hearing items. Comments on public hearing items will be heard when that item is scheduled for discussion. Under the provisions of the Brown Act, the legislative body is prohibited from engaging in discussions on any item appearing on the posted agenda. However, your concerns may be referred to the staff or set for discussion at a later date. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk?
Mayor, there were no speaker cards turned in.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak?
Hi there, my name is Sylvia Melendez. I'm with the San Dimas Chamber of Commerce, and I want to invite the public to the City of San Dimas City Birthday. It will take place on August the 6th from 5 to 9 at Civic Center. And we're going to have a lot of birthday celebration. We're going to have a ceremony, food trucks, live music, bouncy house, family activities, games, beer booths, and nonprofit booths. So we invite you all to come out, and we look forward to seeing you all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak towards the council?
Good evening, folks. Just so many exciting, fun things to do around town. It's just hard to keep up with it all. Sylvia did forget to say that the band that night is called Suave the Band, and it's a variety of R&B, Latin, and jazz. So on the birthday barbecue, we're going to have some really fine entertainment. It's going to be just absolutely great. But earlier in the day, we have our city historical free walking tour. That takes place, we'll start over at the Walker House. The Walker House is in the process of getting a facelift, and it's looking really more promising today than it did last week. So meet over at the Walker House. That's 127 North San Dimas Avenue. I'm sorry, the house number, 1 521 North San Dimas Avenue. And we'll start at 10 o'clock in the morning. Go to the back entry, the gate back there. The Historical Society will be open, our gift shop, our museum, and that's on the second floor. And you also enter that from the patio right now until the house is finished being painted. The walking tour takes about an hour and 15 minutes. It goes through the downtown area. Let's see, Dave Harbin is the one that will be putting that on. He'll be taking the tour. His number, if you want to make reservations, is area code 715-990-3395, or call the Historical Society office, and both of those numbers you'll probably need to leave a message. Just let us know that you want to come, so we'll wait for you. The Historical Society number is 909-592-1190. And it's really a great way to learn about your town, learn about the old buildings. Dave that gives the walking tour, he's third generation San Dimas, so he has a lot of good stories. He might even tell you about his childhood. That's really interesting. Anyway, come on by the Historical Society, enjoy the museum and the gift shop upstairs, and we'll see you on the patio at 10 o'clock. Gift shop and the museum stay open till 1 in the afternoon. Thank you.
Margie, did you say 715?
Well, I was starting to say 715 for his number, yeah. It's a cell phone. He got it when he worked out in that area.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's 715.
Thank you.
990-3395.
Thank you.
All right, just let us know you want to come.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak to the council? Captain Ash.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council, staff, audience. I just want to give an invite to everybody, our community members, to come out to National Night Out. It's going to be on August 2nd, Thursday, or Tuesday, between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. here at Civic Center Park. We'll have game, prizes, barbecue. We might have to work on the ice cream, but we don't have that yet. But I would like all the community members to come out so we could partner up and stand up against crime. So hopefully we'll see everybody there. Thank you.
And Captain, if you haven't just did an ice cream deal, are we talking the same ice cream guy that we always use?
Which is?
Mike?
Mike's? Yeah.
Okay.
But
If you haven't reached him, let me know.
okay, got it. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak towards the council? Okay, we'll close that. Just for an information thing, prior to this meeting, the council had an open study session on the Walker House, the uses, the vision. The council hadn't met and talked about with the community in a long time, so we had a study session. It went a little longer than first believed. So we were a little late with the meeting. I apologize for that, but I do want to say that we continued till right after this meeting. So prior to the closed session meetings, there'll be an open study session dealing with the Walker House. All right? Consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless a member of the City Council requests separate discussion.
Mayor, I move approval, but I do wish to make a comment about one of the items.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay? You want to make your comment?
I do. Regarding item number 4, it's the approval of the facility use agreement between the City of San Dimas and the Bonita Unified School District for use of the San Dimas Recreation Center. I just wanted to acknowledge staff, Councilmember Ebner and I know the mayor through the Bonita ad hoc committee that we have met with the city and the school district some time ago to have some discussions regarding the use and the renegotiation of the use of that facility by the school district. I think this item and the renegotiation of that agreement is progress towards making that relationship more fair and equitable, and I appreciate seeing the city realizing, I guess, a better end of the deal as it relates to that. So I think this is a more balanced arrangement. I'm grateful to the school district for that, and thank you for all your efforts in making that happen.
right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Okay, discussion of ordinance relating to Senate Bill 9, SB9, the California Home Act, including zoning, design, and development standards for future ordinance language. Staff?
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. Again, the item before you tonight is a discussion in regards to possible standards that we can include into an ordinance, Sp9 ordinance, which will be brought back before the Planning Commission and the City Council in the near future. Just to provide a bit of background, Sp9 was signed into law September of 2021. It went into effect January 1st of this year. And essentially, it requires cities to ministerially approve urban lot splits into unit residential developments. Essentially, what that means that any single-family parcel, if split and developed pursuant to Sp9, can end up with up to 4 units. The law has established minimum criteria for these projects. Cities are allowed to adopt objective development standards and zoning standards. However, these standards cannot prohibit the state minimums, which is 1,200 square foot minimum lots and 800 square foot minimum units. Earlier in the year, staff came before the City Council to request and initiate for a code amendment to start working on the ordinance. And again, the ordinance that staff will be drafting will include objective zoning, design, and development standards to regulate Sp9 projects. And what we put together tonight is a couple options for the City Council to consider to be included into an Sp9 ordinance. On June 16th of this year, the Planning Commission considered these optional standards, and provided recommendations to the City Council, which will be discussed later in this report. So again, as Sp9, it covers 2 items, urban lot splits and 2-unit developments. There are minimum qualifying criteria required by state law for urban lot splits, which include parcel must be zoned for single-family use, cannot result in more than 2 lots. In terms of lot size, there's a minimum lot size of 200 square feet, and the new parcel must measure at least 40% of the original lot size. The parcel cannot be deemed historic or located in a historic district. Parcel cannot have been previously subdivided pursuant to Sp9, and also prohibits adjacent parcels from being subdivided pursuant to Sp9 by an owner or person acting in concert with that owner. And lastly, it must not require demolition or alteration of protected affordable housing or housing that has been occupied by a tenant in the previous 3 years. And these are the minimum development standards for lot splits. It could only be up to 2 units per newly created lot. And that's how you would end up with 4 units if one single family parcel was to be subdivided. ADUs and junior ADUs are counted towards the maximum number of units. Cities cannot require dedications or offsite improvements as part of a condition of approval, as approval of these lots. And the owner must intend to occupy one of the units for at least 3 years from the date of the approval. And so this is the minimum qualifying criteria for 2-unit developments. Again, similar to lot splits, parcel must be zoned for single-family use. The project cannot require the demolition of more than 25% of existing exterior walls, unless allowed by local ordinance or the site has not been occupied by a tenant in the previous 3 years. The parcel cannot be deemed historic or located in a historic district, and must not require demolition or alteration of protected affordable housing or housing that has been occupied by a tenant in the last 3 years. These are the minimum development standards for 2-unit developments. There is a maximum number of units. For lots split under Sp9 to be 4 units. And if a single-family parcel was to just develop under Sp9, no lot split, it's 2 units that could be created on a lot split. I'm sorry, it's the other way around. So for lot split through Sp9, it's a maximum of 2 units per newly created lot. If somebody was to develop their single-family parcel pursuant to Sp9, they could have up to 4 units. There is a minimum 4-foot side and rear yard setbacks, which is similar to the current setbacks we apply to accessory dwelling units. There is no setback requirements for structures constructed in the same location and to the same dimensions. And cities can require a maximum of 1 parking space for these developments. However, if the parcel is located within half a mile of a high-quality transit corridor, or a major transit stop, then cities cannot require parking. Currently, our existing bus lines in the city don't qualify as high-quality transit corridors, so we don't have to worry about that just now. However, they can always change. But once the Gold Line station opens, this will classify as a major transit stop, so all parcels within half a mile of the transit station can be exempt from parking. And this is just scenarios here for 2-unit developments, no lot split. So again, it could be up to 4 units. So it could be either a combination of one primary unit and a second unit, or an ADU or a junior ADU. So it can have any different combinations up to 4 units on the one parcel. Just for clarification, a junior ADU would be included entirely within an existing or proposed single-family structure. So you could have up to 4 units, but you would see 3 structures on the property if they were either attached or detached. And I also like to mention that the law does allow cities to prohibit ADUs and junior ADUs as part of Sp9 lot splits. These are some examples of lot split scenarios. On the left, you have a 50-50 lot split. So you essentially would have one parcel split into 2, and each one can develop 2 units on their property. On the right, it's a flag lot configuration. Again, each newly created parcel would have a maximum of up to 2 units. So when we came before the council back in January, we discussed in regards to the amendment and the future ordinance, and there was some discussion about considering some flexible options and some incentives that be drafted into the ordinance. We've included 3 here for your consideration. The first one would be unit size, how it affects the units created under Sp9. The second one would be overall height, and the third one would be how we address parking and driveway standards. In terms of the first option, staff's intent on the ordinance is to draft an ordinance that limits these Sp9 units to the state minimum, which would be 800 square feet. However, we can include options that would incentivize these units to comply with our existing standards. So for example, we could allow an Sp9 unit to be up to 1,000 square feet if it complies with setback and lot coverage requirements, and even allow up to 1,200 square feet if it complies with setback, lot coverage, and provides a code-compliant 2-car garage. This particular option, the Planning Commission was in favor of it, and they recommended that we include this option in the ordinance. The second option relates to height. Again, the staff's intent on the ordinance is to draft an ordinance that limits Sp9 units to 1 story in height. However, we can provide additional options and incentives to get units that are more compliant with our existing development standards. So we could allow a 2-story development if the unit was to comply with setback, lot coverage, and parking requirements. In this particular case, the unit would be required to be built over the garage, which would allow for more additional open space to be provided on the property. The Commission also was in favor of this option, and they recommended that it be included in the ordinance. The third option relates to parking. So as mentioned earlier, Sp9 projects, should they meet the criteria, can be exempt from parking. One way to incentivize these parking exempt projects to provide on-site parking is to deny driveways, or also what some cities have done is to deny annual overnight parking permits for these properties, for these units. This would push applicants to provide on-site parking and thus take cars off the street. When this was discussed with the Planning Commission, so they understood what our intent was, but conversely, it could have opposite effect where all these parking exempt properties wouldn't have a driveway or a parking pad where a car can park on. It would force cars on the street. Therefore, the Commission was against this option. They were against this because it would lead to more cars on the street, and one of the main things they wanted to accomplish with these standards is to keep vehicles off the street. They also recommended that we allow a driveway for these parking exempt projects to provide a parking pad. And then lastly, what I do want to mention before I conclude is that as staff works on drafting the ordinance, we will continue to work with the City Attorney's Office and also stay on top of any additional guidance provided by HCD. Given it's a fairly new law, we want to make sure that we're in compliance with the law and any additional guidance that HCD provides. And again, this ordinance. Once it's drafted, it'll be brought back before the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council, and we'll bring it back to the Council as well. That concludes staff's presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
So I had two questions, and I don't think either of them are ones that I asked Louis about today when I talked to him. But one is about the incentive to have a garage or parking on site, and you're saying possibly 1,200 square foot. And I think as part of that, you said that it would have to be built over the garage.
So we provide two incentives in which a project can end up with a garage. One of them was the height, where if we would only allow a two-story unit if it complied with the existing setback and lot coverage requirements, but also provided to our garage. So in this case, we would require that the majority of the unit be built over the garage, and thus that way opening up additional ground area for open space.
Okay, so not all of it would be over the garage.
Portion of it. Majority of it would, but you would still need a footprint in the ground floor.
Sure, understand. The other question, so if it has to comply, we can have objective standards that the development has to comply with, if they're objective standards. Obviously, if our standards get in the way of them building the minimum 800 square feet, then they're still able to build. But if we add another standard, can we add another standard, and that then would become another standard they would have to comply with if we so chose to do that?
That is correct. It'd have to be an objective standard that we can add into the ordinance.
Okay.
And again, you're right. So we can create and include these objective development standards, but we can't preclude 800 square foot units or 1,200 square foot lots.
Okay. And one last question. I just remembered, I think we talked about this before, but the lot splits that are done according to Sp9 can't be done if there are if there are two properties adjacent to one another. So if one property is across the alley from another property, can those two properties have the Sp9 lot split?
So the question, just to clarify, so what Councilmember Ebner is asking about, so if two property owners own adjacent lots, they can't split both of them. They could split one, not the other. What he's asking here is, I guess, the definition of adjacent. And if the parcel is across an alley, my understanding that it's not technically adjacent, the alley subdivides, it's between them, but we can always get clarification from the City Attorney's Office and HCD.
All right, thanks. That's all my questions.
Can you clarify just a little bit when we were talking about the parking exemptions and incentivizing parking for parking exempt projects by denying driveways? I'm a little confused on that. If you could clarify a little bit what that would look like and maybe like an example of when that might occur.
Yeah, of course. So in situation when projects are exempt from parking, we can't require any parking requirements on the project. So most cities, what they'll do is they'll still allow the driveway. But if we deny driveways, then they are either forced to provide on-site parking on the property or be forced to park on the street. And then some cities are taking it one extra step and denying annual parking permits. So to further make it difficult for these properties to not park on the street and therefore require them to provide on-site parking.
Okay, thanks.
Eric?
I wondered if you could explain how these recommendations compare to the cities nearby and what path they've taken. Has there been any research or any looking at what the communities around us have done with this in terms of recommendations and options?
Certainly. We did research a lot of cities nearby in regards to what they're doing. Some cities actually, what they did in the beginning of the year, adopted urgency ordinances to address this. A lot of cities had concerns that they were going to see a proliferation of applications coming in under Sp9. Today we received 3 applications for Sp9. One of them was actually compliance with all our standards. They just applied for Sp9 to not be required to do some offsite improvements. So we've only got 3 applications, and in regards to the cities we've researched, Majority of them are sticking to the minimum what the state is allowing, 800 square foot units and the 1,200 square foot lots, being restrictive. They're essentially trying to discourage these type of developments because one of the main things is that concerning is that it's breaking up single family neighborhoods and it's sort of altering the character of the single family neighborhoods. So majority of the ones we've researched have done these minimums. There are some cities that have gone somewhat above and beyond to make it difficult. And, we did discuss some of those options as staff, like, for example, denying annual overnight parking permits. Some cities have required that all these units be affordable. Other cities have required that these units be LEED certified. So they're making it very difficult for these units to be developed. And one of the things that we as staff discussed when we were coming up with these standards and possible options was not to go to that extreme where we raise flags and we just make it just very onerous. So just again, to answer your question, majority of the cities that we research are doing the minimums, 800 square foot units and 1,200 square foot lots.
So no incentives for the 1,000 or 1,200?
A few, I think Glendora has some incentives where they provide additional floor area, but majority of the ones that we looked at, no incentives, no flexibilities, just the bare minimums.
Ryan? Thank you. John?
I have a comment.
Okay.
Are we at that point now? So talking about standards and incentives, as an incentive, I would be interested in, if the council would like staff to consider this, something about the affordability. Now, what I had in mind, just independent of what you were just saying, Louis, about them requiring all the units to be affordable, was that if this is a lot split, you end up with one lot that doesn't have any houses on it, and then end up wanting to build two, or whatever combination. Maybe they're just going to build two additional, it'll be three on the two lots, I don't know. But they could have an incentive to get up to 1,000 square feet if one of the units, not necessarily that one, could be, but one of the units on the property, on the original property, were affordable to the standard of, and the standard to be determined, whether it's moderate, whether it's low income. So that's one idea that I would propose as at least to look into, for staff to look into that kind of incentive. Didn't know if anybody else might.
Chris?
I just want to ask a question to clarify. So are you saying that in order to develop that property, that the primary property needs to be affordable at the time of development?
No. So they can have the 800 square foot no matter what. I mean, we can't get around that, right? It would be if they wanted additional square footage, so above the 800. Not only would they have to comply with the setbacks and the other things that you said, but one of those units would have to be affordable. Now, that would encourage them to build an 800 square foot house, right? Because that would be most affordable. And one of the things that's lacking from Sp9, which should have been in or should be in some kind of bills, is to encourage affordability. Everybody talks about it, but I'm trying to think of a way of really incentivizing a person who's doing this. So they could do the 800 square foot no matter what. But if they were doing two, let's say, they could make one 1,000 square foot. That number could entertain any kind of ideas on that number, but one of them would have to be affordable. Lewis had mentioned that some cities are saying all of them have to be affordable. Although that's attractive, I'm trying to be a little bit more flexible.
And when you say affordable, we're saying in perpetuity it must remain affordable.
Some kind of covenant, right? And maybe it's perpetuity, maybe it's 25 years, something like that.
That's actually kind of an intriguing idea. I don't know that I'm completely sold on it just quite yet, but when we discussed ADUs initially, a lot of the ideas that people had in their mind when it comes to an ADU type of structure on an existing single-family lot is mother-in-law quarters or something like that, which if you're bringing in your mother-in-law or somebody that's elderly, then they would most certainly meet some sort of lower income standard. Whereas what was kind of scary to people was developers coming in, buying up lots, doing the SB9 splits, and then turning, these single-family residential tracts into just massive rental markets. And, potentially, if we're looking at, whatever affordability standard, that might be something that would make it kind of not necessarily a disincentive. They could still do it, but it would maybe make it a little less attractive.
Well, the idea is, to increase the percentage of affordable housing, and so it comes right down to that. I mean, one is better than zero, basically.
Yeah.
And this is just something for staff to look at. It's not something to decide right now. I just was wondering if they could maybe explore that.
Yeah, it would be interesting. I think, your typical, the image that we have of the nightmare of lots of ADUs just drowning out our single-family neighborhoods is, the slumlord comes in, builds a whole bunch of these places, ignores them, and just rakes in all the rent money. But that type of landlord is probably not going to be so open to a low-income type of rent structure.
Yeah, I would support more than just one. This particular issue, especially in the area where I'm living, with larger lots like equestrian lots, recently we've had people coming into the neighborhood asking specifically about lot sizes, specifically and not even shy about interested in putting up an ADU. So I'm not a fan of being, when we first talked about ADUs a couple years ago, the council then was going to make it as onerous as possible to be able to say we were going to be very stringent on how we approach this. And I continue in that regard. I think we should be stringent on this, and I think we should be very mindful that the way this is right now, the core is out. The whole downtown core historic area, that they're all unaffected by this. Who's going to be affected by this is everywhere else, and that's going to be everywhere on the south, south of Bonita, north of Gladstone, Via Verde, places where there's enough lot size to be able to do this, and specifically along Baseline and along anything north of Baseline for the most part is going to be prime real estate for anyone, and Arrow for someone interested in doing this. So I'm not a fan of being middle of the road on this. I think we should be a lot more strict on what we're looking for, and I think we should be we should stick with the spirit I think we did before, because as you said in the beginning of this is a threat to our single-family homes and community, and realistically, even the low-income requirement, while it might be beneficial to be able to do that to reach what we're trying to do, I don't think that using affordability to insert that into single-family home neighborhoods is the right way to do it, or the right place to do it. I agree with when we talk about medium or higher density housing opportunities to be able to put in the affordability, especially as it relates to co-locating that around mass transit opportunities and things like that, like the Gold Line Station, etc. But as it relates to this, it's almost backwards that you're saying the Gold Line, half a mile or so within that. Well, everything to the north of that is not going to be applicable to this with the historic designations and what have you. So realistically, you're only talking about anything to the south of it. And realistically, when you look at that, most of it's commercial, industrial, east or west. And, so really all you're talking about this impacting is single-family homes in Via Verde and north of Gladstone, and on the east and west side of town. And that's the other thing. On the east, or on the west side of town, rather, Arrow and south thereof, there are also lot sizes that are big enough to be able to impact it by this. So I'm not a fan of approaching this moderately, if you will.
Well, I agree with that. I want to be reasonable. I will say that the town core in any lot can be affected. So if you go in the town core, the lots are generally 7,000 square feet if they've got an alley, 7,500 if they don't. And the minimum lot size is 1,200 square feet. So they can easily split that in two, and you've got 3,500 or 3,000 or maybe even 28 or something like that. If you've got a smaller lot, you've got to get to 40%. Not smaller, but the 7,000 square feet. And there are still a lot of houses in the town core that are in that, some 800 square feet, some vacant lots, some that are 1,000 square feet, that size. So there is, it's bad all over. But it's especially bad there if you're going to get 4 houses on that 7,000 square foot lot, because we can't do anything about it, except maybe you're suggesting stick with that 800 and that's it. No, don't allow them to do more than 800. I mean, that's a thought. I've got a couple other of these objective standards that I think would be beneficial anyway, but they would help with this situation too. One is permeable surface. So Lewis talked about not having a driveway. I don't have anything for or against driveways, except when the entire property becomes cemented, which is there. You can see some properties in the town core that are like that, where they built 2 units back when 2 units were allowed. And so I'm not saying what the percentage should be, but there should be some. This is different than lot coverage, different than setbacks. They all play together, but what should we have a standard for how much should be where water can actually sink in? And if they were creative and did a driveway that's permeable, then that could fit. That's fine. But so I'm interested in that kind of a standard, just in general. But it would address this as well. The other, while I'm just saying, and I'll finish with this one, is floor area ratio. So I've talked about that a number of times. And I think if we had an objective standard floor area ratio, it helps in a number of ways, but it would help in the scenario of just the overbuilding, because if you just think about it, floor area ratio deals with mass, and it is a good measurement of mass. And so if you have some control over it, then you prevent the larger houses on these, when they do these lot splits. Anyway, that's... Those are a couple other things that I think would be worthwhile exploring.
Could staff, is it possible to explore those issues and then come back, or is this something that needs to be, done today? I'm not saying I agree with them or anything like that, but, there are questions out there. Where does the staff stand on this?
Well, and the other thing is, and I'm going to anticipate what you're going to say, because we don't want to hold this up. We want to get something in place. And so these latter two that I mentioned, the permeable and the floor area ratio, I wanted to introduce them and take this opportunity to ask that we consider them in the future. And in talking to Lewis, whenever we get these in place, they will apply to the Sp9 lot splits from that point forward. So if we don't get it done on this first blush, I mean, if we could, that'd be great. Then we do it, in a little while, and then we can help.
So you're saying this could be done in 2 parts?
These two, I think, are ideas that San Dimas has not embraced before, and so I'm asking that we give them a evaluation anyway to see if maybe, and so whether we can do it now. But Lewis, I interrupted you, but your answer, but.
Yeah, so what staff is looking for tonight is for some direction. In regards to the last 2 items you brought up, the permeable surfaces and FAR, to address the permeable surface standard, so we currently do have a standard in our zoning code where it regulates the front yard setback of the properties, where we allow a maximum of 40% of hardscape in the front yard area. We don't regulate the backyard, because that starts to infringe on how people use their backyard open space, whether they want to have a pool or a patio, a covered patio, things like that. Having hardscape requirements in the back can play a role in that. So we only regulate the front. In terms of the FAR, we did have a discussion before where we can certainly consider it, but in order to consider it, we'd have to look at it and apply it to all the entire single-family zones in the city, not just Sp9 lots, which would require a lot of additional research, which would certainly delay this ordinance coming back before the council, because we can't just apply it to Sp9 lots.
Well, consider this just putting that idea out there, and bring back the ordinance without it for now.
Is that a motion?
Are there any other suggestions or ideas that anybody wants to consider?
I actually just had another question. What role do HOAs play in the approval of developing these lots should an ordinance, once an ordinance goes through? Do they have the ability to restrict this? Is this kind of it? It wasn't addressed in your presentation, so I was curious if you could expand on that.
So my understanding, you can we'll always, there's a lot of questions that are going to come up with this, but we can always get clarification from some city attorneys in the HCD, the Office of HCD. But my understanding is that HOAs cannot impose additional requirements that would restrict these from moving forward.
Great, thank you.
Eric?
Now, I think going into this, I've always kind of been of the opinion that the most restrictive, or I guess the least permissive that we could be is probably the best angle that we could take on this, just for the densification of our single-family neighborhoods. I don't think that's a good thing. I am cautiously optimistic about incentives, but you know, the risk, I don't know, is worth a reward in some regards. So so far I'm kind of just leaning more towards being as restrictive as we can be, and permitting only what we're legally required to permit.
I guess what I'd be interested is in staff bringing back what the most restrictive, legally competent strategy would be, that's reasonable, but also looks at what are the what would incentivize someone to be able to do what they want to do, but do it responsibly and in a way that is still characteristic of the community and the surrounding neighborhood. I mean, that's the overriding concern for me, is watching our neighborhoods get destroyed because we have a bunch of these things jumping up, coupled with an affordability element that might not fit into what was previously supposed to be single-family neighborhoods. So I am most curious if you could bring back, 2 or 3 options, on a barometer or on a scale, maybe 3 options, one being the most permissive, or whatever you're proposing is right now today, and then what's the step up from that would be more restrictive, or somewhat more restrictive, and then what would be the most restrictive, and then let council use that as a baseline and incorporate some of what Councilmember Ebner has discussed as it related to the lot sizes, the 800,000, and let's see where that discussion goes, because this is what it is. I mean, we have to deal with this. I understand that. But I also understand that there are people who are literally eager to go in here and just do what they can to pop these things up, and every time I hear it, and I hear it outside of here a bit, people just saying, hey, when are you guys going to get something going with that ADU ordinance? I'm waiting. And I don't even want to hear it half the time, because those people are not looking to live here. Those people are looking to come in here and just find a piece of property where there's an opportunity and be able to do it. And, the market here, when somebody looks at the scarcity of homes or even affordable housing, and then they pop one of these things up, they're definitely looking at a good ROI in their minds. Everybody that I've talked to thinks this place is ripe for the picking. So that would be my thoughts.
If I may, what I'm hearing from multiple council members is we want to protect the single-family home areas by maximizing the restrictions that we can put on a property that's subject to SB9, and that there's a variety of recommendations to consider. But what I assume to also include when we come forth with something is any other parameters that the staff feel viable to be more restrictive but within compliance with law, and just come up with those and present them to council to discuss, and then the council can decide, yay, keep it that restrictive, no, don't keep it that restrictive. So you have a baseline to start the discussion, or do you want us to just bring a variety of different options, which is a lot more work, to then pick and choose from those as opposed to just bringing a package together?
My personal feeling is that you brought one dish to the table, and I don't know that everybody likes that dish right now. So maybe, a little antipasta, a little something else. See where if the palate.
A little bit Greek food.
Yeah,
Bring it, Chris.
yeah.
I was going to say on the incentive for the garage parking, the 1,200 square foot is big to me for these types of units. So if we're going to go beyond the 800, I don't mind some incentives, like I mentioned with the affordability, but with the on-site parking, I wouldn't necessarily say you have to have a two-car garage. First of all, I would say 1,000 square feet is your incentive, not 1,200. And I would say that a one-car garage is fine with an additional pad. So I know our standards that, two-car garage in every backyard, but maybe because of what's happening here and the density that's being introduced, introducing another two-car covered garage, which, if you think about it, for 4 units is eight garage spaces. That's going to be a little bit much, I think, for the property. So I would say allow them to do I don't know if it's flexible or restrictive or what, but cap it at 1,000. Only require the one-car garage. It's better than none, I guess is what my point is. And it's better than a driveway. A lot of people, I park in the driveway. Lots of people park in the driveway, obviously, but it is nice to have a garage.
I think we're all over the place.
That's right.
I think that's what I think.
Smorgasbord, I would say.
So how do we get it to you to get an ordinance that's going to make sense to the council when you bring it back with all of these additional, what is going to be our program here? I got one councilman saying, let's move forward. I got another councilman, let's add some stuff. We now have HOA in there, which I understand, which is a great question.
Well, that was just a question to see if HOAs could restrict.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because we do have very active HOAs here that are going to weigh in at some point. So, yeah. So how best would the staff know what to do to answer these responses?
So I think what we're looking for, again, is some direction. I think we've heard that tonight. It sounds like some of the council members would like to have a restrictive ordinance, which kind of similar to what other cities are doing, but also maybe allow some flexibilities on there. So I think we can draft some options. One item I do want clarification for, just for staff's benefit, is whether or not to consider the two-story units. We haven't had any discussion on that tonight, so I'd like to get some comments and feedback whether or not we even want to entertain a two-story unit or just limit it to one story.
I think myself that if we start looking at the two-story option, it's going to be this neighbor versus this neighbor and this neighbor versus this neighbor, because this two-story option is going to go up, and then you're going to have people yelling, their right to privacy. And we've already had that drama, several years ago. One neighbor wanted to build a two-story, and he looked right over into these people's pool. I think we're just opening up a little hornet's nest. So I'm going to go, personally, I'm going to oppose the two-story option.
Is there a way to apply that to certain conditions if we were to permit it? For example, if a resident lives along the foothills, for example, North Terrebonne, all the way at the top there, and there's no development behind them or foreseeable development behind them, is there a way for us to be able to condition a property where we could allow it on some and not on others?
It starts to become very subjective.
Yeah.
And that's
Like
where it gets
scenic
difficult.
easements.
Yeah, that's where it gets difficult because we can apply standards, but they have to be objective. So it could be somewhat challenging to do that.
But it's not impossible.
I believe, and we'll get clarification, counsel, from our city attorney's office, but I believe it has to be a consistent. So it can't be this area can have a two-story, this area cannot. I think it has to be across the board. So if we're going to allow it with some type of incentive, it would be open to all Sp9 properties.
But, just Ryan, I think a way that could work is if you do it by lot size. So if the resulting, so you're splitting a lot, or you're just putting another house on the lot because SB9 allows that too. That's the other part of it. So you putting a house on a lot. If the buildable area of the entire parcel is X, and the resulting lot that I guess maybe that's all you have. The buildable area of the entire lot is such and such, then they could do a second story.
We can restrict it to one story. So we were going to restrict it to one story, but we're asking for direction from the council if you want to provide an incentive, as Lewis had described, which would meet today's single-family lot coverage, setbacks, garage, then an option incentive would have been to provide that second story.
I would add what I just said to what you said. So have all those other standards that they have to meet for the incentive, and plus they've got to have a big enough yard. You know, when we did ADUs first, we were allowed to do this. We said it had to be over 10,000 square foot lot to be able to put an ADU in. And that was perfectly legal, perfectly fine back then until he passed some other law that said we couldn't do that anymore.
Correct.
So we're not strangers to having a lot size minimum for stuff. And I'm not saying that's a good idea. I'm just saying that's one thought. I mean, maybe it has to be over a quarter acre to have a second story, 10,000 feet, I don't know what the number is. I'm just saying that it can be done. And I always say, let's not be afraid of math. I mean, if we have a standard and it includes numbers and people have to meet the numbers, it's cut and dry.
Yeah, I think there's areas or conditions, for example, if somebody's home abuts to the wash, I wouldn't be opposed to somebody having a second story there. If there was just nothing behind it, or if it's against the foothills, or they're not in a place, like if you're up on Cali Cristina and you're, over the other side, the county area. Like those are conditions that I would not necessarily have an issue with, because it's not going to have a totally negative effect on someone else. But I also agree with the math that you can look at it, and if you look at what most of our lots are in certain areas of the city, I mean, that might be one way to do it, because generally speaking, a lot of the lots in certain areas have already been either subdivided or developed. So, yeah. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to the second story. I like the idea of a second story more than I like somebody doing garage conversion and making a garage into something habitable that, maybe wasn't intended to be that. So, yeah. I think, to answer your question, Mayor, I think what I would do is move to direct staff to bring this item back to the City Council in a time frame that gives them the opportunity to do the research that provides 3 options, bearing in mind the points that the council members have raised, both exploring the 800 as well as the 1,000 lot or the square footage, and what each one of those variables does to the conditions and how that works, because with each one of those it can work differently. And I think it's important that we look at that, as well as the 1-story versus 2-story. So I don't know that we may not, council may not go for 2-story, but I think we should at least explore the opportunity to have given this a fair shake in terms of discussion, and then bring it back with 3 options on single-story. And those options, just to be clear, would start baseline where we're at, what's something that's tightened up a little bit more, and then what would be perceived as, what's a 0, a 5, and a 10 in terms of restrictiveness, and and then how can we play with that with the respective parts that we're all interested in.
And I understand that motion completely, and I agree with it, so I will second the motion.
Thank you. We're baking. Those are all the ingredients.
It was a long motion, but I think...
Any discussion?
Any dessert?
I'd like to make just a comment. I think that we are talking about buildings as a way of preserving the character of our community. But one thing that I think is important to keep in mind is that it's also the people who live here, and that defines the character of our community too. So as houses become more expensive, the type of person that lives in San Dimas will change. That'll change the character of our city. And so if we don't do something to think about how we can make housing affordable to especially our public servants, 3 of which who serve honorably on our city council, this community will change. And so I think that we have to think about this in the context of the larger issue of affordability if we want to preserve both the look and feel of our city as well as the type of people who live here. So I'm in favor of looking at the affordable housing option for that reason, because I think it is important that a 22-year-old or an 18-year-old who wants to be a police officer or a teacher, whomever, can still buy a home here. I don't think that's the case now. If it is, it won't be very much longer. So that would be the comment that I would make if we think about this.
Okay. Anything?
No, I'm generally not opposed to second stories, especially if there's some sort of lot coverage or lot size restrictions on that. I think when we discussed this last time, there's just nothing prohibiting somebody from building a second story addition on their house right now as it is, so they could still do it anyways. And I'll be supportive of the motion.
Okay. I'll be supportive of the motion also. I would like to hear more about this being subjective. Having listened to Ryan and to John, my straight negative answer towards second stories in this particular situation, I can adjust that, because I got to tell you, when I made the comment, I was talking about in the area of Villa Verde, both sides of the freeway. There's problems with people's houses and stuff like that, but I did not take into consideration the lot size as far as people looking at coyotes and things like that. It didn't dawn on me, but I understand it. So we'll call the question. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Louis, I hope you know what you heard.
And we have some direction. So.
Okay, super. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 2, consideration of the Weiner Lane request for a sewer assessment district, authorizing preparation of appropriate public sewer easement documents, and appropriation and authorizing the expenditure up to $20,000 from the city sewer fund. Sherry Garwood.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. Staff is seeking council direction on moving forward with a possible sewer assessment district for Weiner Lane. Weiner Lane is a private street on the north side of the city. It's north of Baseline and west of Cataract Avenue. There are 12 properties that are currently on septic systems, private septic systems, that would benefit from the installation of a public sewer system. Staff was approached in the late April by one of the residents on Weiner Lane to begin the sewer assessment district process. To determine preliminary interest in the neighborhood, the city engineer developed a very rough estimate for potential cost of the sewer assessment, divided by each property, and then the resident circulated a petition throughout the neighborhood, and he received 8 signatures in favor of moving forward with the petition for the sewer. By way of background, an assessment district is essentially a complicated legal process established by the state for the purposes of installing public improvements, typically in older neighborhoods that were developed prior to modern street requirements or modern lighting requirements. And in this instance, this neighborhood was developed prior to the availability of sewer. So the assessment district process requires that the majority of the property owners within the proposed district vote in favor of assessing the properties within the districts for the cost of the improvements. So those properties will bear the entire cost of the sewer. These costs would include the design of the sewer, potential financing costs for the sewer improvements, the construction of the sewer, and any legal fees for determining the assessment and recording the assessment. This would be a one-time cost that's distributed over a number of years. And it would be assessed to the properties would pay for this through a semi-annual assessment through their taxes. So the assessment district process is not without risk to the city. So there are initial costs that would come, that would need to be generated. For instance, the development of the estimate, the design, would also be included as costs. And the property owners have to vote in favor of self-assessment. So if the city does the design and everything moves forward with all these costs, the approximate cost of the design is about $70,000. So if the property owners end up voting not in favor of having the assessment, so we don't get 50% or more than 50% of the property owners to move forward with the assessment district, then the assessment district fails and the city is stuck with that cost. That being said, there are advantages to connecting these properties to the sewer. Transitioning homes from private septic systems to public sewer benefits the environment by preventing bacteria, nitrates, and other nutrients that are associated with septic systems from contaminating the groundwater and surface water flows. Connecting to the sewer also benefits the property and the area of the city by allowing further development of these properties, such as through expanding their homes or adding an ADU. Being connected to the sewer also, because it provides additional opportunities for development of the property, it raises the property value typically. Given the benefits, there are ways to mitigate the risk to the city for the monies. So on the board, on the screen, I have a typical sewer process, a sewer assessment process. So typically it would start in the green box where the council approves a resolution and initiates an assessment district. It would direct the staff to prepare the design documents and develop all the costs. Then the next council meeting, they would approve the potential cost assessment, direct staff to send out ballots to the property owners within the district, and then set a date for public hearing and do a ballot tabulation. The final step would be the council resolution would confirming the assessment district if the ballots of the property owners support the district. So what we're proposing is to mitigate some of the potential costs or the potential risk of losing of the district not going through, is we're proposing to add a second or a initial step, which is because Weiner Lane is a private street, in order to install a public sewer, we have to get an easement for the public sewer across certain properties. Not all the properties, but essentially half the properties. So it probably, most likely on the east side, all the properties would have to provide a public sewer easement. So staff proposes to meet with the property owners prior to doing the design and ensuring that the property owners will grant the city the sewer easement, and then we would go and develop the legal documents for those easements and get those documents recorded before we go to the typically initial step of directing the city engineer to conduct an estimate and design the sewer. So by this preliminary, getting the sewer easement across the 7 properties would be an indication that they would be supportive of a sewer assessment district. So, in summary, what staff is requesting is to get council's direction to move forward with the sewer assessment district process with an initial step of meeting with the residents, getting their approval for a potential easement public sewer easement across 7 of the properties, and then appropriating and authorizing an expenditure of up to $20,000 from the city's sewer fund for the easement documents. That concludes my presentation, but I'm open for questions.
How much money do we have in the city's sewer fund?
So we're 1.2 million.
I know we're talking about Weiner Court or Street.
Weiner.
Okay, but how many other private streets do we have in the city that have sewer issues? Dixie Court.
Dixie is one that we tried to move forward with an assessment district several years ago.
And failed.
The property owners did not express an interest.
Okay.
There are several. I mean, I can get back to you with that information.
You answered it already. Okay, I'm sorry to step in. Any comments, questions?
No, I'll just say that I had looked at a home that was for sale off of Woodland Oaks Drive and was surprised to learn that it was septic. So it was interesting learning a little bit of history about that entire little area and proceeding west. So I'm supportive of this. That's all.
I had a question. I noticed that in your report you noted that a resident circulated a preliminary petition with 8 of the 12 properties signing in favor of creating an assessment district. Do you know what the reluctance of the other 4 properties, the property owners were? Why they also were not in support of the petition?
We did not contact them, but what our intent is to have a neighborhood meeting and reach out to them.
Got it.
At that time.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I guess I'll make a motion that we authorize staff to initiate preliminary steps for creating the sewer assessment district, meet with the residents, prepare the easement documents, and appropriate and authorize the expenditure of $20,000 from the sewer fund for easement documents.
Second.
Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 5-0. Spend our $20,000 carefully.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't throw it down the drain.
All right, we're going to move on to oral communications. Members of the audience, speakers are limited to 3 minutes, or as may be determined by the chair. Do we have any speakers, cards, or anything? Anyone wishing to speak to the council at this time?
Julie Salazar. I just want to make a couple of comments on the SB, was it 8 or 9?
9.
The city's in transition. The world is in transition. And I sat in on an affordable housing meeting today for the San Gabriel Valley. And we have an example in our neighborhood. The people moving in next door, they lost their mother during COVID, so their father moved in with them. So this is going to be something that's going to be transitioning, where we're going to need more senior housing, where parents are now going to stay in their home, but then build a home for their parents in the back. The people next door are going to take their garage area and create another position for their father. After dealing with the fire victims for a month and a half and going through every organization and every possibility for senior placement in the San Gabriel Valley, I can tell you, and after listening to our people today in our meeting, we are going to be in great need of senior housing placement, not only in our city, but in the entire San Gabriel Valley. You have transitional places where younger people are not, as Eric said, are not going to be able to afford a home in San Dimas. You have kids moving back in with their parents. In the desert, they're utilizing casitas out there for their older children. so that if they can't afford a home, at least they have a place to live. So I know that we have issues with these additional units being built in the backyards, but we also need to keep focused on what our future is going to be like in this city. And with some of the possibilities of our apartments being phased out, and with the lack of housing that we have right now, and the way that our city's aging, we may be eliminating not only younger people from our city, but we may be eliminating a lot of older people from the city who aren't going to be able to afford to live in a big house anymore or afford to live anywhere. We need balance in all things. Look at the property size, look at the parking situation. There's got to be some type of consideration for second story, because there is a lot of areas that can utilize that second story. I read the social media piece about the woman up in Villa Verde that was having a heart attack because the guy next door didn't even build an ADU. He just put a second story on his house, which he was legally entitled to do. People need to understand it's an entitlement to have a single family home these days. It will get harder and harder and harder in the future for people to actually have a single family home. Whether you like it or not, the future in this city and other cities are going to have to be different types and look at different types of living situations in the communities. I talked to a person today who had said that their Habitat for Humanity, instead of building 2 units on one property, built 10 cottages on one property. The city was against it, the neighbors were against it, and then when they realized afterwards how important it was to have that many units in the area and how most of them were going to be seniors and how it was such a need in the community, people start changing their mindset. So our city is more than Villa Verde and the northern part of the city. There are needs in the city that are different. We need to keep a balance in the community, but we need to think differently than how we're thinking and how we've thought in the past, because things are changing. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the council? I see a lot of folks wishing that we would end and we could get back to the study session, but we're going to move on to the city manager's report.
Briefly, in the last week, we lost 2 sitting city council members. On Thursday, Pasadena Councilmember John Kenny passed away at the age of 61, and on Monday, Huntington Park Councilmember Manuel Avila died at the age of 81. So our thoughts and prayers go out to their family and their respective cities. Goal line update, San Dimas Canyon is now open 3 months early, which is great. The goal line crossing on Walnut between Bonita Avenue and Arrow Highway will be closed to northbound traffic from August 2nd through August 13th, and from August 14th to the 16th, they will close the crossing in both directions for final paving. Bonita Cataract, the crossing remains closed to traffic until August 13th. From August 13th through December of 2022, the intersection will be opened in a modified traffic pattern due to the lead time on the traffic signal equipment that is being added to the intersection. City staff is working with the Gold Line to finalize the details and working to restore normal traffic patterns as soon as it becomes possible. At Monte Vista, this crossing is set to permanently close to vehicular travel upon the opening of the Bonita Cataract intersection, and the pedestrian traffic will be maintained through the tunnel. And that ends my report.
Thank you. City Attorney?
I have nothing tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Members of the City Council, appointment of Planning Commission. City Clerk?
Mayor, City Council staff is recommending for your consideration reappointment of Commissioners John Davis and Tomas Molina to serve on the Planning Commission. Commissioner Davis and Molina terms expire this August. They have expressed interest in reappointment, and these reappointments may be subject to discussions on the structure of boards, commissions, and committees, which is scheduled to be discussed at a future study session.
Comments?
I think they've both done an outstanding job, and I would move for their reappointment.
Second.
Any other conversation? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, congratulations to Planning Commissioner Davis and Planning Commissioner Tomas Molina. Okay. Councilman reports meetings intended at the expense of the local agency. Seeing none, council requests for future items, comments on the updates. We'll start off with Councilmember McConnell.
I just want to express gratitude to the people who came out to this study session today. Thank you for your time and for your input. That is all I have to say.
Thank you. John?
I have nothing to say.
Holy Christ.
I have things to say, but I won't say them now.
Holy cow. Holy cow. I think that's the first time in 17 years I heard those words come out of his mouth. Eric?
Can I go last?
Yes.
You had nothing?
I didn't say that.
Okay, you
All right.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief. I just wanted to thank the members of the community that came out to the Public Safety Commission meeting on the 19th. I appreciate the concerns that have been expressed regarding traffic, as well as the flock safety cameras. I appreciate the sheriff's station working with the community to be able to look at the effectiveness of those, as well as the community's input as it relates to the council's decision to add a motor to the contract. I appreciate, although I did not vote on that for my employment reasons, I think the City Council made the right decision on that based off of the comments that were made at that Public Safety Commission meeting. And in fact, there were people actually saying we should be funding 2 motors. So my hat's off to Deputy Martinez, who I hear is doing an outstanding job. I also hear he's doing a lot. So I've heard he's doing an outstanding job, and I've also heard, well, he's working hard. So we'll leave it at that. I didn't have an opportunity to get to the volunteer recognition, but I did want to thank all the volunteers in the city and the staff that put the time together to be able to put that into place and welcome the new businesses into the community, both Baby Brothers, which I'm familiar with and have patronized before in their South El Monte or El Monte location. And lastly, or 2 things, we had our ethics training yesterday. If you're curious how fun that training is, I do believe we had it live last time we did it, so you could check circa 2020 or so and look for, just search AB1234. It really hasn't changed too much, and you'll see some very deep, entertaining training. Lastly, as Councilmember Nakano said, I want to thank the members of the community that came out regarding the study session regarding the Walker House. I do think there's a lot of feedback and input, and I value that from the members of the community that have spoken up and those that have worked historically to keep that location, that house, here for the community. So I'm confident the council will come to some sort of solution to preserve that property and a use that benefits the entire community. With that, last thing, I just wanted to plug National Night Out, August 2nd, Tuesday, here in the city. The captain talked about it earlier, but it's a great opportunity that focuses on the public and community partnerships as it relates to policing, and you are important and valued, and I do hope everybody attends. It's always a good event. I regrettably will not be able to attend because at my place of employment, I'm actually coordinating the National Night Out event for the Sheriff's Department. So I will not be there. Sorry, Cap. But Supervisor Barger will also be somewhere else that night too. So nevertheless, thank you. I hope everybody turns out. It'll be a great event. And if I can get to ours here, I will. Thank you.
I think that's the fastest he's ever talked.
I know we have a lot to do.
So I've got 2 things, one kind of both related. Councilmember Nakano and I were talking before the meeting, and he was inquiring about a particular act of violence that occurred in Orange County in the city of Westminster a few days ago, where a ex-NASCAR driver, Bobby East, was stabbed to death at a gas station. And I think especially in light of the recent news stories of an uptick in violence across Southern California, including a string of armed robberies and murders that occurred at 7-Eleven locations on 7-Eleven. That story of the stabbing at that gas station in Westminster kind of took the back seat to a lot of the robbery series news coverage. But one thing that he brought up, which I did not realize when I saw that story, I didn't look past the headline that man was ex-NASCAR driver was stabbed to death in Westminster, but he's actually a San Dimas resident. So I want to hopefully we'll entertain the motion to close the meeting in his memory. But that brought with it another story. I was watching that news coverage that was, dominating the news cycle for a while there about the 7-Eleven robbery series, and a name came up on the news about the murder victim at one of the 7-Elevens, and the name was bugging me because I knew it sounded so familiar. And then a picture comes up, and I realize immediately where I recognize this person from. And it's kind of a story of redemption because actually about 3 years ago, I had arrested that individual for breaking into somebody's house. He has, an addiction issue, and he was doing what he felt he needed to do to get the drugs that he needed to feel normal, which is a horrible, horrible thing. But when I talked to him, I found him, talked to him about what he did. He's the most honest crook that I've ever met in my life. I think, he honestly showed, a desire to make it right with the person that he victimized, and was completely 100% honest with me. And it makes sense in that context what transpired when he was actually killed. He had gone to a 7-Eleven to pick up cigarettes or something like that in the middle of the night. And the 7-Eleven was actually closed when that individual was going to go in and rob it. But there was a guy sitting outside, either waiting for it to open or what have you. And that individual was trying to rob that person at the front of the store. And this guy was telling him, I don't have anything to give you, so I've got nothing. And the suspect was really pushing him, and obviously had shown extreme violence in other incidences before that. But this individual that I had spoken to before actually intervened and said, hey, just leave that guy alone. And for whatever reason, the guy that was committing this robbery turned around and shot him and killed him. And so, like I said, it's a story of redemption. He's clearly got his own skeletons in his closet, but he's an honest guy, and he was doing the right thing when unfortunately his life was taken from him. So the second story that wasn't really related to our San Dimas resident kind of popped into my head when we were talking about it. But so with that being said, I would hope that we can close the meeting in honor of that ex-NASCAR driver and San Dimas resident, Bobby East.
I didn't think either one of these guys were going to talk so much, but I certainly understand the Bobby East issue here in San Dimas, and thank you for bringing that towards us, because I didn't recognize that. I saw the same articles that everybody else seemed to have, but I didn't realize he was a San Dimas resident, so thank you very much. I had a lot to say, but I don't want to go as long as Ryan did, which is normal. I kind of want to be just like, check the clocks. I just kind of want to be like Councilman Evner, okay? But we are going to go into a study session momentarily to finish the discussion on the Walker House issue. I did want to comment that I agree with Julie. It is very neat to see San Dimas residents, kids, come back to San Dimas. I think that brings a smile to all our faces, and I understand the issues with our housing. We don't have a lot of houses that most of our kids can afford. So it's one of those things that I remember when the assistant principal at San Dimas High School was a San Dimas resident, or she went to San Dimas High School. She was able to come back. Alta Skinner is always a very great advocate on where our kids go, and so it's one of those things. Unless somebody has some objection, we'll adjourn the meeting.
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
Not an objection, but I just wanted to, before you adjourn the meeting, I wanted to make the statement on the record for our closed sessions tonight. So we're going to have 2 closed sessions. The first one is real property negotiations, and then the second one is a closed session regarding potential initiation of litigation. Councilmember Vienna and Councilmember Ebner are going to recuse themselves from that second closed session item due to real property that they own that's potential or conflict of interest with the property that we will be discussing in that anticipated litigation item.
All right, we're going to adjourn. We'll resume in 5 minutes in the conference room.